Yeah. Now you're going to direct it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to kick you out.
Welcome to Classic Car Restoration Club for our Q&A for October. Appreciate everybody for coming out tonight. You know, we've just completed, 3 days of video projects on this 67 Mustang behind us. So yeah, we're going to frantically, rapidly trying to finish up working on that car and get it here to you guys tonight. And I appreciate your patience. I know we're about 8 minutes late getting out, and it was, I'll take the whole blame for this. We kind of got booked back to back. We kind of figured we'd be done a little earlier, but the best laid plan. So appreciate you guys for coming up and hanging with us until we could get going live. Joined tonight by Terry Wright, professional paint and body guy, and Gary Simpson, my son, who's also a professional paint body guy and metal fabricator and upholsterer. I guess he's got you beat.
Yeah, I'll be quiet.
All right, guys. Thanks again for coming out. Right down below the chat roll, right below the video here on the website, there's a place to get a free bolt circle guide. You can get a bolt circle guide, wheel bolt circle template. They make them hard out of plastic. This one isn't plastic. This is a PDF you can download, print out your printer, cut it out, fold it up, keep it in your wallet. You find that great set of wheels that might work on your project. You want to make sure the bolt circle fits your car. There you go. You've got it ready and in your pocket with you without carrying around that big old bolt circle guide with you all the time. So it's free. Go ahead, download that. And let's get started tonight. Our first question comes in from Mike Haley. He says, I'm considering the purchase of a 1951 Packard. Has a 327 cubic inch straight 8 and a Packard Auto Trans that runs and drives, but I'm told it's burning points. Since it's been converted to it's burning point since it's been converted to 12 volt. I'm guessing it will need a ballast resistor. I agree. Usually if you're burning point, the whole idea of a ballast is so you're not running high voltage through your points. Your points only serve to trip the contact from your coil to your spark plug. It's not if you run, and the ballast resistor exists to drop that voltage down so you're not running even 12 volts through that points, because they're just little tiny points. And if you're burning up points, 90% chance you need to drop in a ballast resistor. And that should solve your problem. Hopefully, or what you might want to consider is a lot of guys switch to getting rid of the points altogether and go with electronic ignition. And now I know you guys are like, well, I don't want to lose the authenticity of my car. Pertronics has a deal where you can send them your distributor and they'll convert any stock distributor over to an electronic distributor, and then you get rid of the points altogether. It's just a magnetic pickup. Now, Terry, the purist, will have an opinion.
No, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Well, that's not much of a panel discussion.
I'm not against it.
You're not
for other people.
Oh, yeah. You would rather run the points. Do you run points in your Firebird?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Upgrade it, make it a lot simple.
All right, we have a couple of different points of view. So there are options out there, Mike. Thanks for the question. All right, let's see. Mike Haley also writes, I hate smartphones. Well, I think your brother hated smartphones too for a long time. And, finally he gave up the flip phone.
He still hates it. He still hates it.
All right. William writes, He's got a small black Chevy. How much vacuum advance should I get at idle? I'm at 8 before top dead center with vacuum line on the same when plugged. So his vacuum is the same when it's, yeah, it should advance some at idle. It's not going to advance a lot at idle because it's at idle.
Well, it depends what it's hooked to, right?
Yeah.
What source it's hooked to, but it
Yeah,
should be.
yeah.
You should get a lot at idle. If it depends what you're hooked to.
Yeah. Well, normally you want to hook to the metered port on your.
Well, there's
carburetor.
debate about that too.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Well, you're gonna either way. Once you crack the blades a little bit, you ought to get the same vacuum. But there should be something there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could even try a different. You could drive manifold.
Yeah, if there's no difference between no vacuum advance, not hooked up and hooked up, it would tell me that there's something wrong with the vacuum advance.
Like it's not working.
Like it's not working, or the source of your vacuum is not a good source.
Yeah.
That'd be my guess. How many degrees before top center? Usually, when we set them up at idle, it's somewhere between 10 and 12 degrees of advance for a small block Chevy. And that's at idle. Total timing, with advance and, at RPM. A lot of times you're looking at like 32 to 36, somewhere in that range of total timing coming off idle. And that's, your maximum amount of degrees before top dead center. And that's usually, you're up at like 2,500 RPMs at that point.
Is there a big lopey cam in it? That might.
Yeah, well, yeah, the cam would affect, how many degrees of advance timing you put into it,
Vacuum it's creating.
and how much vacuum it's creating, and how much vacuum it's creating for the vacuum advance.
Yeah.
So if he's got a real big lopey cam, he may be, or if the engine's tired. If the engine's really tired, it might not be creating. So there's a number of reasons why your engine may not create enough vacuum to properly operate your vacuum advance, but I would think if the thing that raises the red flag is not the 8 degrees timing. It should run with 8 degrees timing of initial timing at idle. But the fact that unplugged and plugged has no difference in your timing is kind of surprising. So I would check my vacuum source or check my vacuum advance mechanism to make sure it's operating.
I think I would probably look up one of your videos on just using a vacuum gauge first. Before I start chasing down a vacuum advance that doesn't work, make sure you have vacuum. Check out your vacuum source. See what you're getting first.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea.
And you have a nice video on here that you could just watch. And
you are so smart. Yes, of course. Some guy named WAP. Right. So I'm thinking about changing over to E85 because it costs the fuel. If a guy does this, how is the mileage? And is there any problem with taking long trips? Or do you need to plan a road trip around refueling?
Unfortunately.
Wait, do we know who this is asking this question? Yes. Yes, you do. It depends where you live. And, in the Midwest, it's a lot more prevalent than in some areas. I know some parts of the country, E85 is real hard to get. It depends how you build your engine. Is it going to be, there's lots of cars on the road that'll run on E85 and they get good fuel mileage and everything else. But, if you build a car for 700 horsepower, you're probably going to get about 6 miles to the gallon, and with alcohol, maybe 5.5. And in which case, a fuel tank, and let's say, for example, a Chevelle might only go 100 miles.
Yeah, I really wish our E85 expert was here with us.
Yeah. Our 85 expert isn't here today, but he would probably agree that maybe it's not the best choice for everybody. But if you are really, if you're not planning on taking big cross-country road trips and you want like a car that, has 14-to-1 compression and makes lots of noise coming into the car show, that's the way to go.
Well, we just had experience with this, didn't we? About with Ross and having to wait for him to go search for some E85 fuel.
Yeah, we had a trip. We had a fall colors trip, and we were 100 miles out, and we needed to wait for one of our comrades to find a E85 fuel station and fill up. So it's while the benefits of E85 is really cool because you get 115 octane, it runs cool because you're burning alcohol. It's cheap. It's cheaper in most cases around here. It's cheaper than regular gas. So you're getting 115 octane for, cheaper than regular. You can run 14-to-1. You can have 700 horsepower without a lot of expense. But there's a trade-off. Like a lot of things, there's a trade-off.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Guys, keep asking the questions. I love the questions you guys are asking tonight. We're not 100% convinced our feed is perfect. But so if there's a little delay in us answering your question, just understand that we kind of set up in a hurry here, and we're hoping that we have everything running better at this point. We've got a few questions that came in online. We're going to address those right now. And one of the first questions I got from a fellow member is this club just for domestic cars? And I would say no, of course not. We embrace a lot of different cars. Whether it be whether it be European or Asian or whatever. Yeah, some of of course, we're in America, so a lot of our expertise is with a lot of the American cars. Gary's kind of fond of some of the import stuff, and
but I've worked on body shop for a couple of years, and it's like, some of the imports or whatever, they could be challenging just because how they're assembling the vehicle is quite a bit different. Like I've installed the headliner in Volkswagen Beetle versus a 50 Chevrolet. The differences are wild. And just in how the vehicles are assembled, especially in the earlier years. But I don't know that many people or friends immediately that own foreign.
A lot of import stuff.
Yeah.
It surprises me how many young people are really into some of the import stuff. And, like I said, I was at a car show recently where alongside of me pulled a Toyota Century, and I'd never seen such a thing. And it was right-hand drive, and it was a different looking car than I'd ever seen. Yet a lot of young people seemed drawn to it, and they were like, just floored by, oh yeah, that's a Toyota Century, and it was like it didn't catch me as something I should even look at. But I think that's the great part of the hobby, is that there's something for everybody, and you can always find a car at any show that's going to get you excited, and and that's the good part about it. The moving forward, our next question we have is, comes from a gentleman who writes, I just acquired a 1937 Olds. Is it better to leave it 6 volt or change it to 12 volt?
I know you spoke about this many times.
Yeah, a few times maybe.
Yeah. Take it away.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of changing to 12 volt if you can and if it's possible, because a lot of the components will, your starter will run faster, your lights will be brighter. You can get rid of generators and switch to alternators and have, brighter lights and more, and then it's easier to find accessories, if you want to, even if you want a hidden radio under your dash, it's hard to find those in 6 volt.
Also, if you have a dead battery at the car show and you need a jump.
You need a jump. It's sometimes hard, although you can jump from a 12 volt, you just can't, although some guys get kind of paranoid about that and they don't really want to hook their 12 volt to your or their 12 volt car to your 6 volt car. So it can be challenging in some regards. I think it's a good improvement. Have I done it on every car I own? No. I guess it depends on what you want out of your car. Do you want to keep it 100% stock, or do you want to drive it on longer distances and enjoy it and know that you can get a jump start somewhere, or you can get an alternator somewhere, because nothing could be worse than being 200 miles from home and having a generator go out and your only option is to get it trailered home because or to run off your battery as long as you can before you have to stop somewhere to recharge your battery or whatever. There are a lot of, if you're planning on long road trips, I'm a big fan of the 12 volt. If you're just going to cruise around town, it's a personal decision, I think.
I would say that's probably one upgrade that I would even think about considering. It would have to be a pretty pristine original car for me to leave it that way. Mm-hmm. But I think that's probably a wise move. Yeah. Am I really saying that? But
I can't believe you. I'm like, what? Did Terry just say he changed?
I've not been in that situation myself, but I could see that being a smart move.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. And if push comes to shove, I know there are a couple of companies out there that will take like your old original 6 volt generator and they'll strip the guts out of it and turn it into an alternator, a 12 volt alternator. So it'll look like you still have the original generator in place, but it's actually all been updated internally to a 12 volt alternator. And, so even for the purists, there's a way for them to get.
I would be even more likely to do it if that was the case. Yeah, so that's good.
Great. All right, guys. Okay. We have a few more questions in. I'm sorry, my chat roll didn't roll up right away. We got a question from Facebook. WBS. My clear coat is chalky and peeling. Can I just sand it down and reapply clear coat?
You certainly can, but that won't fix anything. Now that's got to come off. It's degraded down to the base coat, and you might be in your base coat most likely. You're not going to fix it. You can try to polish it up as much as you can and save it, but it's gone. The clear coat's gone.
Any thoughts?
Lipstick on a pig. Yeah, you can shoot it again, but you're just kind of wasting your money, clearing over something that's already failing because it's just going to fail again.
Yeah, and and I think that was a big problem when a lot of paints first started switching over to clear coats. A lot of the early clears had issues with flaking off. I know. And then, it didn't seem long before there was such thin base coat underneath them that, even as soon as the clear coat was compromised, the base coat was gone.
Sure, absolutely. Like the UV protection's in the clear coat. Once that's gone, there's whatever's underneath is not going to stand a chance.
Yep, and I have seen it done, though. I have seen it done where people try to just re-clear a car. It never looks pretty.
It's ugly.
Yeah, it never looks pretty.
That's ugly.
It's an attempt to do a Band-Aid, and Band-Aids seldom work. Kind of like when I was in high school, and your muffler rotted out. You ran down to 10,000
Muffler
auto
tape.
parts, and you got like a muffler bandage. You thought you found like a $5 cure for your rusted out muffler, but actually all it did was lighten up your wallet by $5.
Couple packs of steel wool.
So yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I don't think it's a good one. Okay, Mario writes, is a 1967 Chevelle, bucket seats, missing seat studs. However, how do I best fix that? Oh, that's easy. Usually the case if you're missing studs, was it originally a bucket seat car? Because I know on the Chevelles, they have studs that come up from the floor that your seats mount to. But if it was a bench seat car, there's only four studs, and they're on the outside edge. But the bucket seat cars have, 4 more studs that are right alongside the transmission tunnel. In which case, companies like
LMC,
our Classics Plus and our Classics, what's the one in Ice Santee?
Auto City Classics.
Auto City Classics. Ross, who's not here tonight, his 68 Chevelle was missing 2 of the studs for the bucket seats, but they sell an actual bracket that you can weld into the floor panel, and it has the 2 additional studs on it, so we could mount the bucket seats in there without any issues. And if it's the outer ones you're missing, if they've gotten busted or broken off, it's just a matter of locating
some
welding,
kind of kit or
or welding in another stud somewhere on the floor to hold that. And actually, they're having looked at them, they're not. Maybe it's 1969 standards, but there wasn't a lot of structure holding them studs in place.
I kind of wonder if they were just kind of pressed in. They're all pressed in or something.
They were kind of
punch them out.
They were kind of pressed into the sheet metal from the underside, and it was like, wow, this is I'm sure the National Highway Safety Institute didn't have standards for things like that at that time, but I suppose if you got a seat belt that's not attached to the seat studs anyway, so maybe you're fine.
There's ways to get those bolts replaced, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like anything. If you've got like a missing stud, it's a matter of either replacing it or there's, like I said, for some of if it's like the inner ones, there's specifically panels built that you can just drop in and weld in and give you seat studs again. Tom asks, I have tried, I may have a tired motor. Oil pressure 25 PSI at idle. Well, it's hot, I've seen new motors have 25 PSI at idle. Any recommendations to easily improve PSI? 350 Chevy small block, and they're notorious for it, in 62 Impala. You didn't say if that's a cold PSI or if that's initial or once it gets hot. For a hot small block Chevy to run 25 PSI at idle, I wouldn't think twice
about that. Idle?
No. Normally, if it's cold and on initial startup, it should be, probably 40, 50 pounds.
On initial fire up or whatever, and then you're up the temp and it's idling, it's staying at 25. As long as that number climbs up, and when you rev it up a little bit. Yeah. If it stays at 25, then you probably got a really tired motor.
Well, if it never went lower than 25, I still would, I don't know.
I'd drive it.
I've had motors. I've driven motors where it drops down to 10 psi sometimes, and it wasn't alarmed by it. You know, if it's at idle and it's not on load or anything, it's like it's still got enough oil pressure to cool it. It's just my thought. I wouldn't be alarmed by it at 25, I guess.
If it drops below 25, then start to get concerned.
Yeah. And if it drops below 10, then you restart. Yeah,
shut it off.
That's usually where, you know, a lot of the preset warning gauges with warning lights in them. Usually it's when it drops below 10, oil pressure drops below 10, that they start flashing or doing things like that. I know the gauges on my 35 Chevy, if they're at 9 psi. 9 psi, they all start flashing if the oil pressure drops below that.
I had a Bonneville with an audible sensor that would let me know when I was low on oil, and every time I'd go uphill, oil goes back to the engine. I'd hear knock, 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 knock. Oh, I need some oil. I didn't have a gauge in that car.
You had that sensor.
That's the.
Yeah, I think my wife had that one. You know, yeah. Hey, go look at my car. It's been making noise, and the oil light's been on for a week. All right. What's that? Toulouse. Well, I'm not going to try it. The question is, what causes my Model A to backfire when shutting off the engine? I shut down the spark advance, the throttle, and the fuel, the key, and it backfires. Do you have an answer? My initial thought is would be that it's still getting fuel after shutdown, and that my thought is, well, if you're shutting off the ignition, there should be nothing there, so then it's just fuel detonating in the engine, maybe. The great thing about Model A, there's so much controls. You can set your advance on with a lever, and with all the controls you have on it, I'm not definitive of what it could be. Any thoughts, guys?
Well, there's no ignition, so there's something hot's igniting the fuel that's in there, and
like perhaps maybe the carb isn't like the seats are fuel isn't something that's still allowing fuel to enter. It's hard to, but you would think that would still, if it's doing it after shut off.
It's dieseling.
That would be my own thought. The dieseling.
Possibly a sticky float.
Yeah, sticky float or something. Maybe a carb. We have to rebuild the carb. I would tend to think it has something to do with fuel supply for that. If you're shutting everything off, it should be, maybe the fact that, I'm not sure I have an answer for you without, just trying a few things myself. I would, maybe, at this point, if it's a constant issue and it's been an issue, combined with any other issues it might have, if it seems to be starting fine or restarting fine, maybe it's an issue with fuel supply, or maybe it's even has to deal with your spark advance at that, because spark advance can sometimes cause dieseling in an engine after shutdown. But it's hard for me to believe that if you're shutting off the ignition system, and it should be closing the system down. So my thought is fuel supply. Just trying to work through it in my head. Okay. Sonny writes, have you ever clipped a convertible? And I'm assuming he means
chopping the top.
Or is he talking like a rear clip or
section? Yeah.
Or
front or rear, yeah.
Front or rear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. it's not ideal. Well, that's for sure. Because you're cutting through everything that's holding that damn thing together.
That's true. Yeah, and some of them cars, it's like, yeah, I remember, convertibles are, their own animal. There was a 64 Nova not too far from here that guy put in the paper, and it was like really cheap, and it was like, gosh, I got to go over and look at this. And at first glance, the interior was just flawless. Top looked gorgeous, paint looked good. But then, I crawled down underneath it, and I reached up, and a Nova unibody car, so I stuck my finger right through the floor, and it left, and I didn't even apply much pressure. I just went, holy smokes. And then it was like, this, and anytime you have a unibody car where the floor, it gets rusty, then it's like, oh no, you got to worry about that thing breaking,
Bending
it
in
wants
half.
to settle down on itself.
Did he say what car was? What kind of car was?
He did not. He did not. He
So we
just
don't
said
know if it's a unibody or if it's frame.
Yeah.
If it's got a frame, it's probably not a big deal.
With if it had a full frame, like like a Chevelle or a body car or something like that with a full frame, probably wouldn't be an issue.
But if it's not, the rocker panels are pretty much holding that thing together. So
take your measurements, get some conduit in there, and brace it up as best you can before you start cutting it into pieces. So that way you at least have a good reference point to exactly where it was. And if, you're cutting it right down the middle or whatever, get your doors and the hinges back on it, verify all that stuff fits before you burn it together.
Yeah, and if it was a unibody car, that raises all kinds of questions for me.
I think depending on the car, if it's something that's common, I might even source new inner and outer rockers and put complete rockers on after you section through the floor. Just for if it's available and easy to get, I might do that.
Yeah.
After it's all put back together.
Gary has put new quarters on a convertible.
I don't know. The real fun ones are trying to get something like a Corvette convertible on a rotisserie. It's all a fiberglass body, and you're just going, oh man, is this thing gonna bend in half?
Yeah, and that's usually the kind of thing where you got to start.
Pay attention to your body lines or whatever before you tear it apart. Make sure you know where that door was.
Okay,
and then
Sonny writes after have you ever clipped a convertible? And he writes, was planning to reinforce with 3x2 tubing and staggering the cuts. Any more advice? Oh, so he is going to put a rear or something on a convertible. Hey Sonny, if you give us a little more feedback if it's a unibody or a frame car. If it's a frame car, I don't know if it's you've got plenty of support there. But if it's a unibody car,
he's got to be talking about a frame car if he's saying reinforce. So I'm sure that's something that slides inside the rail. And
maybe.
Drill some holes and plug weld it to the frame and then do your stitch.
Unless he's talking about building a temporary frame structure to hold the unibody together.
Could be.
How about let us know? Is it a unibody or is it a frame car? That would help a lot.
Yep.
But if it's got a frame, that's much easier.
Yeah. Usually the frames on convertible cars are built like tanks. So, okay, moving forward. Lynn asks, will the Godzilla crate motor fit in a 1967 Mustang coupe? All right.
I'm guessing that's something new. Something on the 5.0 spectrum.
I'm not sure.
We don't know what.
Now I'm gonna look like I haven't been following the industry enough. All right, guys. Help me out here. What's the Godzilla crate motor?
Ask Google.
I can't tell you.
Nobody knows. Oh, here, we'll type it in quick and see if we lose our feed. And it is a Ford engine. 70 liter. Will a 7.3 liter fit? Yeah, okay, now back to the question.
Will it fit in the Mustang?
Will a 7.3 liter engine fit in a Mustang? Anything's possible. In a 67 Mustang. What you're probably going going to end up having to do
Remove the
is
shock towers.
eliminating the shock towers, which will mean you'll have to change out your front suspension to like a Mustang 2 front suspension, and they make a kit to convert that over, but it gets rid of, usually the guys that are putting them in are the guys with the Coyote motors, because that's such a wide motor that, you know, you
can't get it in
You
there
can't get it
and
in
retain those stock shock towers.
And you know, back when they were building the Boss 429s, that motor was so wide for those 69, 70 Mustang. They took the shock towers and they put them in
a press.
They put them in a press and crushed them.
Are you kidding me?
No. And they crushed they crushed the
made
shock
a couple
towers.
of pie cuts. They squished it down and ran a couple of welds and welded a couple of reinforcements onto it. But that was the way they got them to fit in there.
So, you know, can you make it fit? Yes, there is no doubt in my mind that you can make it fit. Is it a simple fit? Can you just drop it in? Probably not.
If he's looking at that motor, I don't think he's worried about it. Worried about it simple.
Yeah, after looking at this motor, it's not too badly priced at, like, you know, let's see, gauging by quick prices, we're looking at, you know, 7 to 9 grand.
I just want to know how much horsepower.
I don't know. We're getting smarter all the time here. All right. So now that we've solved that like major dilemma, yeah, give it a shot. You know, but when you're all done, Lynn, send us pictures. Yeah, we'll gladly put them on the site and, you know, tell everybody else how to make it fit. And Lord knows, we have a 67 Mustang Coupe right back here. We could use a Godzilla motor in. All right. Michael writes, I have a Chevy Camaro and the dashboard is all cracked from the sun. Where would you suggest to get replacement dash?
It depends on the year.
Chevy Camaro and the dashboard's like, yeah, it depends on the year. Where would I suggest? You know, sometimes if you want a stock one and you don't want to, if you're on a budget, salvage yards are great for more, you know, if it's a 2002 Camaro, you can probably find one in a northern tier. You know, what I say, I don't say don't go to New Mexico or something to get one, because the odds are it's been baked and all the plastic is dried out and hard and it's going to be all cracked up like the one you got. But, you know, if you can find a temperate zone, like, you know, in the northern tier, yeah, you might be surprised how many, you know, up here in the Rust Belt, it's like the cars end up looking like hell, but the interiors look flawless because the cars rust out and they end up in the salvage yard long before everybody wears out the interior. So there's a lot of cars in salvage yards with beautiful interiors. At least that's been my experience. But, you know, if you're looking for a really clean exterior, then you go south. But then when you get down there, then the interior is all dried out and cracked and have issues. So, you know, maybe somewhere in between is the happy medium. But that would be my first suggestion. If it's for first gen and some of that stuff.
First gen, yeah. You just buy the reproduction one. If it doesn't match your car, then you get out the vinyl dye, and there's a video on the website of how to do that.
Wow. Look at that. Look at that. Another plug on the videos.
There are, I kind of went through that with my Firebird too, and the reproduction ones, they're nice and they're economical.
Soft,
but some of them
and pliable.
They're not, yeah. But they don't always fit that great. And if you can get your old core redone. It's expensive. But they do a fantastic job of doing it too.
So did you have yours redone?
No, actually, I got mine. I just got it from a swap meet, and it was original dash. Mm-hmm. That was a northern car, but I think it sat in stores for a while. But so it hasn't been touched. But my original one was cracked all over. But you have options.
Your car was a more southern than here, wasn't it?
Evansville, Indiana. So I wasn't like hot, but it was enough, I think. But yeah, they're out there. It depends what you want to spend.
Yeah.
But I would probably try to source a used one. And like Gary said, you can dye them real easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's some of the stuff you can do with the dye stuff is just impressive. It's even the repop ones that I got for the 57 DeSoto. We had to have it sent from Sweden because the only place that makes a 57 padded dash is some guy in Sweden. But they only come in one color. They come in black, and so you're automatically obligated to dye it unless you want black. And really, the process isn't that hard, and there's no issues with it. And we have good videos on the site that kind of take you through the process of preparing and cleaning and dyeing the vinyl, and it holds up as well as any other vinyl product. And Ross, he's changed his carpet color with vinyl dye, and his headliner and his entire interior, which many components were olive green color, and now they're all black. And if he didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't know. You would just go, "Oh, it's a nice black interior."
When I worked at the Pontiac dealership, and when doing warranty work on any interior parts, armrests in particular, like you say, you get them, but they'd be tan. You needed them gray, but we painted them all the time, and you would never. They'd hold up great. They last for a long time, and you'd have to work real hard to get it off.
Yeah.
So I recommend it. Don't shy away from it because it's not the right color.
Yep. Good advice. Okay, Brian writes, I have a 1965 Lincoln Continental. I've had power steering pump rebuilt twice, and it still groans for a while. When turning the wheel after starting, within about 5 minutes of driving, it stops that. Is air getting into the system? Any ideas of what could be causing this?
I don't see any leaks.
Yeah, if you don't
double check all the fittings with the wrench.
That's one thing you can do to tighten all your fittings just in case you're getting air in the system. Some of those things can be a bit of an issue. I know when I got a rebuilt pump for one of my cars recently, and it came in and installed it and filled it with fluid, went to purge it, to turn it back and forth to purge all the air out of the system, and it just groaned and whined and whistled and made all kinds of noises. But I'd gotten it through a company locally here that just rebuilds power steering pumps, a large corporation. And I called them up and I said, I don't know what's wrong with this. I replaced, my old pump was whining and squealing and howling. And then I put on the pump, the rebuilt pump that, you sent me, and it did the same thing. And they said, yeah, there's probably something wrong with it. And they said, bam, they sent me a new one. I had it in a couple of days, installed that, and it worked fine. So it could be, even though the pump I had was rebuilt, there was something, obviously they knew something was wrong with it, and they quickly exchanged it, and the new one worked just fine.
Yeah, hopefully you got a warranty with the rebuild on the power steering pump.
You might want to consider it. Actually, one of the things I did when I was testing mine is that I had another spare around. It was an old, crusty, rusty power steering, but I knew it worked. And I thought, maybe there's something wrong with my steering gear or something with the lines or something. So I stuck this old, crusty thing on there, thinking, all right, well, just see if this works. And I put that on and turned the wheel back and forth with one finger, and it worked like a charm. And it was like, how can this one work so good? And my new rebuilt sounds like I'm, choking a cat. So finally, I just, after I got the new one, and they were good about it, and it worked beautifully. So don't assume that just because it was rebuilt that it's right, would be my first advice. Yeah, Gary has good advice. Make sure that all the fittings are tight. Make sure your fluid is up to level. Make sure you purge the system as much as possible. But if you're driving it, you're turning it right and left at full stop. So it should be. When you look inside, if you can see inside your reservoir, it shouldn't be foamy. Usually that's a sign that the pump is failing. It's cavitating air into there, and air inside of hydraulic systems is not a good thing because air compresses and it destroys the efficiency of your power steering at that point. So, my advice would be you can find another pump to test it against rather than relying on whether your rebuilder did a good job. Might be worth the investment.
Find somebody else that rebuilds power steering pumps.
Hopefully the rebuild wasn't just a clean and repaint.
Oh, the $5 rebuild?
Yeah. Careful what you buy offline or over the internet.
All right, Walt wants to know about this little pony car in the background. We just finished 3 days of video shoots on it. We did subframe connectors. Something Terry wouldn't agree with. And
who needs those?
Yeah, we did subframe connectors that stiffen up the chassis. We converted the rear differential over to a posi unit, or actually it's a True Track, and we put in new axle seals, new axle bearings, and the last but not least, we did the rack and pinion conversion on it, and we were just finishing that up moments before we came on the air. So that's why maybe the situation looked a little different. The shop's in a little bit more disheveled than usual. Got a little more grease under my fingernails than usual, but that's all right. We had a good time assembling this project, and it came out really well. And I know the owner is pretty excited about it too. All right, guys. Sonny writes, sorry, I didn't clarify. It's a unibody car. It's a 64 Falcon Sprint convertible. Oh. Yes, you need to, if you're going to replace a clip on it, lots of measurements.
Oh, if you're talking about on those, if you're just talking about like the front clip, like from the firewall forward, so like just the front of the rails, the aprons, and the shock towers, just get some really good measurements for it. A lot of guys will bring them to a frame shop and just have them line it up if they have the old school fixture jigs, where you have the ladder you set up underneath there. You grab a couple of points from underneath and then a couple points on front, so you get those squared away, and then it'd be real easy just the front clip. But if you're cutting that car in half, like down the middle of it, where
doing the whole rear clip,
where you cut the front half of the car down between the doors, that's a whole nother challenge if you're doing something like that.
Yeah, especially on a unibody car like that, you're going to have to add that stiffness back into the floor if that's the case. If you're doing a rear clip on a car like that, because a lot of the convertibles, they rely on the rockers, and the rocker panels are usually structural, and then they run like structural strips up the middle of the floor to help stiffen them as well. But yeah, you'd want a staggered cut. You might want to replace, entire
rockers themselves if you're cutting it in the middle.
Yeah, and I think Terry kind of alluded to that too. You might.
It's definitely doable, but you want to make sure
measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Let's see. Michael, right? Chevy 1991. Now was that related to.
Oh, I think that was dash pads.
I'm trying to find what that was related to. I'm sorry. Sorry guys if I missed this. I'm not seeing it right away. Oh no, it was he has a Camaro with the dash pad, but I'm not sure the reference to the
1991.
it's a 1991 Camaro. So
He needs a third gen
third gen Camaro
dash
dash pad. And the third gen Camaros are kind of in a class to themselves. Well, even the fourth gens to some degree too now. They're not a lot of aftermarket support, but it's growing.
I gotta imagine if you popped out on the Year One's website, they do have a catalog for them for third and fourth gen Camaros, and it would surprise me if you couldn't buy a reproduction dash pad directly from them.
Yeah, and there's a few sources for that kind of stuff out there. I doubt you're going to get anything out of GM for 91 at this point.
Probably.
Yeah. And then of course Sonny did finally clarify his Falcon convert he's replacing the rear clip. So yeah, it is a big job, and you want to make to do something like that, a lot of people do it like on a frame bench kind of deal where they can lock down and have solid measurements where different points are on a chassis. So they make sure once it's all welded together, all the points are in the same place. And before everything gets locked into place, things like the door openings are double, triple checked to make sure, your door openings don't end up askew or, wider or shorter than normal. It's a big job, Sonny, but it can be done. Just, do your homework and do lots of measuring and planning for it. He says, sorry, I keep hitting the return key and it sends my rear clip torque boxes and quarters are gone.
Oh.
Yep. So it's a big rust repair project.
Yeah. That's not uncommon. If the torque boxes and the quarters are gone, then the inner and outer wheel tubs are gone. So yeah, and it's like, and that's on a Falcon. I don't know how much support there is for the, reproduction sheet metal, but if he's starting with a donor car that you're going to be taking the stuff from, I'd probably try to keep that intact. It's just, measure twice, cut once and then if you can get in there and throw some reinforcements to your weld seam, basically sticking a piece of metal into, both sides of it, get some plug weld holes in the outsides of it, do your rosette welds on that, burn your middle butt weld at, anything you can to stiffen up exactly where you are welding the donor to the car you're trying to save.
I think you brought it up, or maybe he did, about staggering the welds. I'd maybe stagger the outer rocker and inner rocker where I seamed it. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'd seam them both in the same spot. I think I'd cut one forward of the other one.
Yep.
And do that. And you still got to brace it. Still got to back it. But I think I'd stagger that.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? It's more work. There's no doubt about it.
If you're sourcing, the donor or whatever,
mm-hmm.
Odds are you're going to be dealing with whatever the junkyard cut it at. Unless you went out there and marked it off and said, I want some extra.
Yeah, you said cut it at the A-pillar, something like that, and give me as much as I can. But yeah, you're right. It's what you have to work with what you have. But if you can, I'd stagger those joints.
I agree. I would. You wouldn't want all of your cuts all the way across the whole car in the same place.
It's not easy.
But you could do it.
Oh, you can definitely do it.
Definitely good. For most enthusiasts who are probably going to want to, especially coming across the floor, might do some lap stuff and Unlike, I know you could weld like it completely across and then it would never move, but not everybody does that.
Yeah. Yeah, weld all the things solid together. Don't just tack weld it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Add some stability back into the system, but yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon especially on a Falcon and especially a convertible. Convertibles they tend to lose in not just Falcon, but most convertibles, especially if
They rot.
they've been outside.
The top fills up with leaves, and so the water doesn't drain, so it all just pools and sits in the quarters and everything else.
So it's probably a good practice, and it probably wouldn't hurt to build. You talked about using 2x3 tubing. I'm thinking as a temporary support for the car while he's getting it. But that's essentially like building a frame table for it. So,
yeah, and that's not a huge or uncommon thing. It's like if you got the car set up where you want it, like as your height, you use like 2x3 on the floor or whatever, and came up to like where the rear bumper mounts hold, and just have like a tab with 2 bolts going through, your brace that's sitting on the floor. So when you cut it away, the new one comes in, you can bolt the reproduction or your donor to that, so that the bumper holes are right where they were before you started cutting. You could definitely get away with some clever stuff like that. There are videos out there of guys showing you exactly how they're slicing and dicing in their home garage.
Yeah. You can do almost anything in your own garage that you can do in a professional shop. It's just some of the equipment makes it so much easier to get things done because, the professional shop is all about getting things done in a timely manner. So a lot of times the equipment is geared towards doing things quicker, and as well, but sometimes there's some equipment that it's going to be out of reach for some from home builders. Some of the big fancy spot welders and stuff like that, but you can do the same stuff with drilling and plug welding too. So
hole punch or drilling the holes and rosette welding it in place.
Cool. Hey guys, what? You had a moment. I saw it.
I would do it.
You would do it?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, if you're into the Falcon for really cheap,
yeah,
it could pay well.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's trying to save.
Or maybe it's got sentimental value.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Okay, we got a couple more minutes here. We've got questions that came in. It says, hello, please, I am restoring a 1966 Mustang convertible. All right. The car is on a body cart, and I'm ready to install new quarters. Wow, this sounds like the same guy. I have heard that the car should be on its suspension and on the ground before installing the quarters. What are your thoughts?
There's a lot of debate about this one.
Does the car?
I've done it both ways. And I didn't have issues with the doors lining up after I was done. It's like, but I could see where it could get away from you. Like if you're cutting a convertible and you don't brace, you have nothing holding it down right down the middle. But if you have a piece of conduit that you physically weld from there to the back of the B pillar or to the C pillar, that's going to guarantee that that's not going to want to walk or move on you at all, you're fine. But if the car's all beautifully painted or something, then they probably don't want you pulling the windshield out and welding tubing into it. Right. So then you would want to go with the after, having it back on the suspension and replacing it that way.
For replacement quarters? And on a convertible, the quarters are part of the structure,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, what's the danger? The danger, as soon as you cut all the quarters and eliminate the structure, that the car starts to sag, then suddenly your doors don't line up. And
well, because if it's just on a body cart that's supporting the four torque boxes, the idea is you cut the quarter off and then the car kind of sags a little in the middle, and then when you get all done welding it together and then you set it down on the ground, you're kind of going, okay, well, the doors don't fit.
I would brace the top of the door openings, go ahead and cut it off. I would ask the question, what's the factory do when they weld the quarters on? Is it on the suspension? It's in a jig. So you basically are in a jig. So if you're worried about the rear end dropping once you cut the quarter off, I would support that upper opening of the door. Keep it from going.
Tie it somewhere down the middle.
Yeah.
Where it isn't just the floor and the rockers supporting the car.
I had my Firebrand on a cart, but I have a roof. That's holding it together. I had no issue cutting the rear end of that car off and welding pieces back together and bolting stuff together when I was done. But convertible, I'd support it somehow.
Yeah, convertibles make it a little bit harder, and I think you have to take a few precautions just because it's so easy to, I've seen too many cars ruined like that where they end up having to work extra hard to get them squared up again. So I think bracing is the key. If you're gonna do extensive work on a car, don't think you're just gonna replace quarters on a completely finished car. It's going to be a big job for you, because as soon as you cut the quarter off, then you have to worry about losing. But if you can brace the car, if you can brace the internals, and sometimes bracing doesn't necessarily have to be all welded into place. You could
I've done it before where it's like you go from the hinge point on the outside and then you come onto the inside and you're already going to be throwing paint where the quarter is. So welding it there and just bolting it.
Yep.
Yeah, that would work.
So there are ways without welding up the whole structure. So it's the kind of thing where you got to ask a lot of questions, plan to brace, and like even when you chop cars or doing any kind of work like that. A lot of it comes down to bracing to get in the car, keeping the car square, because you don't want to end up with a car that's out of square.
You don't want to be that guy where you watch your car fold in half.
or the guys who end up, they do enough work on one corner of it, and next thing you know, they realize their car's got a twist to it and it doesn't ride on the road.
Why is this side of the bumper 3/4 of an inch higher than that?
So, we've seen it all over the years. So, keep it, do lots of bracing and keep everything straight and square, and use common sense. You think about it before you just grab a torch or grab a saw and cut something off. Sonny Wright, thank you guys for brought up some very confirming ideas. I haven't clipped a car since the 1980s. And it wasn't my build, so I'm a little anxious about doing my own. I have extensive experience welding and bodywork, so I just wanted confirmation. Well, you tuned in at the right time, Sonny. You ended up with a handful of metal and body shop guys here today. Good advice. I'm happy you could get like some professional help that maybe make your project go a little smoother. All right, believe it or not, it's been an hour already.
Oh,
seems like it went quick.
It did.
Once again, down below here, the Bolt Circle Guide. Feel free to sign up for that. It's free. Anything that's free is worth saving up for. It's a handy tool to have. Print it out. Have it in your glove box. Have one in your back pocket, in your backpack when you go to the swap meet. You never know when you're going to find that great set of wheels and not certain that they're going to fit your car. With that, we want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We really appreciate, you guys coming out and bearing with us. We're sorry about our little bit of a late start today. We were working on this, getting this pony car off the lift today, and we got real close, but thankfully, you guys hung in. Thanks for coming out.